Thank you very much. Can you hear this thing? Yeah, good. Loud and clear? Good. So first of all, all the thanks actually should be going in the opposite direction. So first of all, I would like to thank Dean Foyer and the GSHED faculty and staff and students for inviting me and making me feel so welcome. And through some really fascinating conversations, already sharpening my thinking on something that I'm really just trying to get my head around. I also would like to thank the Israel Institute for supporting this visit through their Visiting Scholar Fellowship. This lecture is a culmination of a course that just ended around 3 p.m. this afternoon. Was it really so many hours in one room? In which I examined with students similarities and differences between how these issues are being played out in Israel and in the US. I don't know about the students, but I learned a lot from our readings and conversations. So this lecture is going to have 4 parts. In part 1, I'll discuss identity formation. Next, I'll try and characterize the digital age. And then third, I will try and bring the two together and look at what is happening to identity in the digital age. How is it changing the way in which identities form? And then finally, I'll explore what we might do about what's happening. So before any of that though, I'd like us to do as they do in the fashion magazines, have a before and after. We were just hearing about makeup on YouTube. So here we go. Here's the before. These are 2 presentations of identity separated by the digital age. Oh, hello. Okay, it looks like
on off.
Turn on.
Sorry.
Oh. That always helps. The first rule of the digital age: turn it on.
The second rule is
hope for the best. I don't know what the second rule is. The second rule is turn it back off. No, it's not. Nothing to do with it. It's here. It seems to be the problem. It's not responding to anything.
Oh, something just happened. There we go.
Okay. This is the before. I think it was just asleep. No. It wasn't. It's not. This, of course, is going to happen many times during this presentation because of the topic.
At the rodeo. Can you hear me? And not usually a problem. When you think of leadership and life lessons, thoughts don't normally go to where I'm from. But I think you'd be surprised. Where I'm from is the boonies. Webster defines the boonies as a location so far outside of the city limits, even animals question your presence. And I've lived there most of my life. Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, it did not matter. My parents, nomadic Southern Baptists that they were, always seemed to find the boonies in every state. But for the purposes of this presentation, the boonies were in Texas. To give you a little insight into me, you first have to understand my father. He's a man's man. He played football in high school. He was a paratrooper in the Army. He was always kind of all the time. I refer to my childhood as my military service. In the summer, before the 7th grade, it was a bleak, hot Texas day, as every day in Texas is. And my father said, "Get the truck, boy, we're going to town." Town? We never got to go to town. Town was Bogota, Texas, population 491. And we lived 7 miles northeast. But town was where the things were. That's where the stuff was. You could get a root beer float in town. You could get tater tots in town. I said, "Sign me up." I got in the truck. Well, we didn't stop in town. We kept going through town out to the high school, and that's where I was introduced to football and two-a-days, which is a vicious, heinous practice, twice a day football practice. What kind of...
It's worth, I'll send you the link. You'll enjoy the rest of it. That's the before. Now the after.
It
So before we move on to looking at identity formation, I said there was not going to be any audience participation, but since you didn't move down to the front, the deal's off. So just a quick round of what differences and similarities you notice between those two portrayals of identity. Anything anyone wants to hazard? Volunteer? Yes?
They still use pictures. Well, we couldn't see the pictures that he was using, but visuals were helpful.
They were both using visuals, yeah.
Geography and family.
Right, geography and family featured very strongly in one and not in the other. So those circles of relationships, parents, family, church or religious affiliation, locality, didn't feature at all in the second one, but featured very heavily in the first. Anything else? Yeah.
Their identities were formed by experience or perception of experience. So in the first one, the guy talked about how he got on a truck, how he went to the town or whatever. And in the second one, they want you to think that they're having, that they're going running, that they're eating healthy, whatever it might be.
Right, so in both cases they're presenting something about their experience, but in one you can see the fabrication, and the other, it seems like a genuine, it's giving off the vibes of an authentic story, but both are stories. Yeah.
The interpersonal interactions also. One was far away, the other was right there in the room.
Right, right.
The stark contrast between humor and irony and humorlessness and a complete lack of irony.
Also, that's also very interesting. So some of these themes hopefully we will come back to, and there'll be opportunities for you to explore the things you didn't get to say, hopefully when we have some Q&A at the end. What I'm going to now do is leave our before and after pictures and go into the theories of identity formation. What do we know about identity formation, disregarding for now the internet age? And we're going to go way, way back in history to the first psychologist in America, Mr. William James, brother of the novelist Henry, the first official chair in psychology at Harvard University, Professor William James, first psychologist. And he wrote really quite profoundly about the nature of the self in ways that sound almost modern. And I'm going to read a piece and that I think sums up his approach to the ways in which identities form. From 1890, The Principles of Psychology. I am often confronted by the necessity of standing by one of my empirical selves and relinquishing the rest. Not that I would not, if I could, be both handsome and fat and well-dressed and a great athlete and make $1 million a year, be a wit, a bon vivant, and a lady killer, as well as a philosopher, a philanthropist, statesman, warrior, an African explorer, as well as a tone poet and saint. But the thing is simply impossible. The millionaire's work would run counter to the saints. The bon vivant and the philanthropist would trip each other up. The philosopher and the lady killer could not well keep house in the same tenement of clay. Such different characters may conceivably, at the outset of life, be alike possible to a man. But to make any one of them actual, the rest must more or less be suppressed. So the seeker of his truest, strongest, deepest self must review the list carefully and pick out the one on which to stake his salvation. This is a very rational view of the self. Arrayed before a person are all the possibilities of what he or she might become. And the task incumbent upon them in identity formation is to choose wisely between those options, because that choice will determine the rest of their life. So said William James in 1890.